Head over to BoardGamePrices.com to see the best price for the Estates and thousands of other games. Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we're going to be building floors and high-rises, and on those floors are going to be different companies which you're going to try to own stocks of, and at the end of the game you're going to be trying to reap the rewards of those stocks, but only if you have the best view, which is on the top floor. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Estates. This is a re-implementation of an older game that is now coming out. It's coming from Capstone Games. This is part of their Simply Complex line. And so I'm going to show you how the game's played, and I'll see you on the other side. In the Estates, you're going to be trying to win the game by having the most points, and you're going to be doing that by owning stocks of different types. And everyone's going to have a certain amount of money with these beautiful, hard, nice-looking checks that have your money. Each of these is $1 million that you'll be spending throughout the game to purchase estates. Let me show you how the game works. Now this was the stock I had just showed you, but there's 5 other stocks, each of them corresponding with a company and a color. There's also some printed patterns that you'll see that'll help with colorblind friendliness in the game. But each of these stocks are only going to be owned by one player, and those will help that player get points at the end of the game. Sometimes positive, sometimes negative. We'll show you how. So here's the game setup. You're going to be, over the course of the game, putting these different floor cubes. Now, these different colors correspond to these different companies. So here we have Collar Investments. It's gray, and it has this little pattern here. And you can see some of the floor cubes are gray. And again, for colorblind friendliness, the patterns match here. Now, there's actually 36 of these floor cubes in the game, but randomly, only 24 of them are going to be used each game. So each game is going to have a little bit different strategy. You're going to be looking at what's out there, what values are there, and things like that. But over the course of the game, these are going to be being built on this board over here. Think of this as a construction zone, and these are going to end up being built, and some of them will be placed on top of them and things like that. So let's talk about how a game works and how the rounds work. So on a turn, a player is going to be auctioning off one of the pieces that you see here. But before they do that, this game's a closed economy. Every player has $12 million, but at the beginning of their turn, if they want to, they can place one of their million underneath the board. It's illegal earnings. They're sort of stashing that money away. Each of those is going to be worth a point at the end of the game, but it's taking money out of the games, and it will change the interactions of the auctions as the game goes on. But that's an optional thing you can do once per turn at the beginning of your turn, put $1 million there. But then they're going to take one of these pieces and put it up for auction. Now, most of the time it's going to be these floor cubes because that's what's here most of the game. And when they do that, you can only take one of the 6 pieces that are on the edge. So let's just say this player takes this piece here and they put it up for auction. Now, you don't necessarily put it on the board, but this will go up for auction. Then the player to the left will bid, and you're going to be bidding with this money, and they can bid a certain amount, and then the next player has to either pass or go higher. Now, everyone only gets one bid. Then when it gets back to the player's turn who actually selected the piece, they have 2 choices. They can either take the highest bid from the highest bidder and give them this floor cube, or they can decide to pay the highest bidder the exact amount that that highest bidder did win with. So they can either decide to pay the money to that player and take it and do something with it, or they can take the money and give it to the highest bidder. It's a very interesting auction mechanism. And just to double say this, that it only goes around once. Everyone gets their best bid. So what happens when somebody does win this? Well, that player is going to take this and they're going to place it. At the beginning of the game, you're going to be working off the street and going in these construction zones. Here, you look here. They have to start at any one of these 3 rows. They have to put it in, and they always have to start whenever you put in a row as closest to the street as you possibly can. So maybe they build it right here in the middle like that, and that would just be the end of that player's turn, and it would be the next player's turn. They would possibly put money as I just showed you, and then they would put up an auction. But now, if they wanted to auction one of these floor cubes, it's one of these 3 pieces or one of these 3 pieces, because it's always the furthest to the left and the furthest to the right in each row. So that changes as to which things you're going to try to auction off. Now, an important part is the first time anybody places a floor cube of a specific color, they are going to get the stock of that color. In this case, it's green, so that player would get the emerald properties. They will have this stock for the rest of the game and nobody can get it. So as soon as the first floor cube of each color has been placed, all the stocks will have been in players' hands for the rest of the game. So what are you trying to do in all this? Well, there's a floor cube here, and over the course of time, this might get raised up with other different blocks. For example, let's say it's a couple more turns in. Let's say this gets auctioned off. It's a 3. Now, when the player wins this, they can either place it here, or on top of this, or on top of this, or here. Now you can only place it on top if the number is lower than the number that you're placing it on top of. So it starts with the highest number and goes up just like that. Meaning if someone had placed a 1 here, that's basically the only building that's going to go there. So it might go something like this. Now, when placing them up like this, you might notice there's a couple of sand things here. When a block goes in one of those spots, it can only be 1 floor. So that's it. That's as high as this can go. But over the course of the game, let's say they placed it here, another different thing you can auction off is one of these roof tiles. You randomly take these, and these have a different number distribution, and that's a 3. Once everyone knows this, it'll get auctioned off. The winner can place it on one of the top floors like this. Now, when you place a floor on here, this means that this building is completed, and it's very important because now what this means is that only the top floor cube of a color will score for this building once a roof tile is on it. So you're trying to be the one on top when a roof gets put there, because that gives you the ability to possibly score here. This green one does nothing for the player that has that stock. This building's only going to score for the player that has a purple stock at the end of the game. So as the game goes on, it might start to look like this. And again, you're moving this way. Now, by default, the game will end when any 2 rows are completed. And completed row is one that goes by default all the way, the 4 spots in the construction zone, and they all have roofs on them. So we're starting to get a little bit closer. We're probably, close to about halfway through the game at this point. So even a little bit further, this is getting close to being finished. If this one gets a roof, this is a completed row. However, there's other things that you can do to mess with people. One of the things you can auction off is one of these barriers. And what this does is you can take in or make larger the row. For example, this is a barrier of 1. If this gets auctioned off, the player can take this and they'll put it here, which means it's going to be 1 space longer than normally. That's what the 1 stands for. So now, even though this was close to being finished, it's now going to have to go further. And that's important because at the end of the game, only completed rows will score positively. All the non-completed rows score negatively. So you can really hose somebody over by making it late in the game that someone's not going to be able to complete this. However, this one could have been placed here, which meant, hey, this one is 1 less than it needed to be 2. Now this one just needs some roofs, and then that one will be completed. Now there is a way to get rid of these. Is once per game, this cancel cube can get auctioned off, and it'll allow someone to cancel one of these barriers off just like that and get them out of the game. Another thing you can auction off is the mayor. The mayor, when you place this, will double the points of this row. Again, remember, if it's completed, it's positive. If it's not, it's negative. So this could double positive or negative points for this row once that mayor is placed. So the game will end in 2 ways. Once any 2 rows have been completed, meaning they have floor cubes and roofs and no modifications of the barriers to make it longer, the game would end. Or if there's not enough floor cubes or roofs to finish the game, it will end. And when that game ends, each player is we're going to score each of these rows. And again, if it's a completed row like this, the top floor cube of each of those are going to score. What happens is you take this, which is a 4 roof, a 2, and a 6. So that is 12. The green player will get positive 12 because they add up all this. It's completed, so it's positive. This red player would get 4 plus 5, which is 9. Green player would get 5 plus 6 is 11. And gray would get 4 plus 2. So that's the cool thing. The purple player here is going to get 3 plus 3 plus 4 because this is completed. But these ones are all going to get negative points. -5 for blue, -6 for blue, and -3 for red. Also keep in mind all these points are doubled because of the mayor. Whoever has the most points at the end is the winner. All right, well, there's the estates. Disclaimer, I did do a paid preview for this for its Kickstarter earlier this year, but that has no bearing on what I think of the game. This also made my top 10 most anticipated games for Essen, so let's talk about it. First of all, great production. I've looked at some of the pictures of the original game that's re-implemented, and wow, did it look bad. This is amazing. The graphic design, the production, the cubes, everything in this game, the money, fantastic production here by Capstone, and they typically do great stuff anyway, so this is another feather in their cap. This auction mechanism is awesome. It's shared by another game that I really love that came out in recent years called Ponzi Scheme, where you're kind of, everyone goes around once, and then when it gets back to the player whose turn it is, they can either pay the money to the highest bidder that highest bidder bid, or they can take that money and give up whatever's for auction. And it's such a cool mechanism. It works so well. You don't have these auctions going around and around and around. You really got to think of giving your best bid. And also, even just the selection of what you're auctioning off is huge in this game, because the game has really simple mechanisms. You're picking a piece, you're auctioning it off. That's literally the whole game. But it's what you select. Are you going to select one of the floor cubes? Are you going to select a barrier or a cancel or the mayor or a roof? And depending on what's out there and whose turn it is and who has what stock, it's so simple of a game, but yet there's so much depth there, and it really fits that simply complex, product line. This is very high on what I call my depth to complexity ratio, where the game itself is not complex at all, but there's a lot of depth there. So I love that auction mechanism. It's really the core of this game, and it's really fantastic. The player interaction in this game is awesome. I mean, you're looking at the stocks that they have. You're looking at what buildings or floors are up there. You're looking at what's available. And I really like when you're selecting those buildings, you can only select the ones on the ends. So you can like purposely start going through some of the rows to try to get to the ones that you really want to win. But even when the floors are there, you can take one that you know someone else is really going to want. And so you just take that because you know you're probably going to get a really good bid from that player. Or maybe you take one that you really want and hope that nobody else wants it and that they don't see that, and that maybe they don't bid too much and you can get it for a steal. So the interaction of what's happening, of the different things that can happen, is really huge in this game. It's all about interaction. The alliances. You're kind of making alliances with people because, again, the rows that are finished score positive. The ones that don't finish get scored negatively. And at different times, you're going to have alliances with players trying to fill up a row, and then somebody else is going to come against you. And then maybe you have some spots in another row, and then you'll change your alliance and try to go, you know what? Okay, if this is going to be negative, I'll work with you over here. And it's really interesting because over the course of the game, you're going to be kind of like tugging and pulling and pushing and doing different things with different players that can change throughout the game. And I think that's really cool. The game definitely has a roller coaster ride. At the point, you're going to be like, oh, good, I'm set up well. But then in a couple twists, you could be like, oh, man, they just made it bigger. Now they're going to be working over here. Now I feel like I'm getting worked against. It is like a roller coaster ride, but it's quite exciting. So overall, I really enjoyed the game. What did I not like about it? There are possibilities of king making happening towards the end of the game. The last player or two can really change the entire scoring of the game. The game can be pretty swingy, where, hey, the last play of the game could make or break you, literally by having lots of positive points or having actually even negative points. And it can be done by somebody who might not be able to win either way, and they have to make a decision which row is not going to score. So king making can happen. So just keep that in mind. It is definitely a negative possibility of the game. Also, the game could use a score track. Going through all the scores and adding them up and just putting them on paper at the end wasn't that great. I would have loved to have seen maybe flip the board over, have a score track. That would have been something well welcomed. Also, the checks. They're awesome. They're thick. They look good. They look like real checks. But they are hard to count a little bit when they're in your hand. They kind of stick together a little bit. But overall, excellent game. If you like auction games, if you like stock games, things like that, if you like games that are simple, that don't take long, but have a lot of depth, this is one for you, and it's called The Estate from Capstone Games. The overview in this video was shot on a Watson model Game Topper. Upgrade every game you play with the ultimate gaming accessory, Game Toppers, shipping now. Check them out at GameToppersLLC.com.